Recording.
Call the meeting to order at 12:06. I need to do roll call.
I will. Okay, Commissioner Beeler,
Here.
Commissioner Curry,
Here.
Commissioner Mendel,
Here.
and Chair Wall.
Here.
All right.
Okay. We had a little time to review the November 15th board meeting minutes. So we have, we'll look at the motion to approve that.
Before we get a motion, I have one question on the minutes.
Okay.
And I'd like to refer to page 5 of 8, item CI5. And it's in regards to, talking about the phone tower out there and the C train being moved. So it didn't dawn on me when we talked about it, but I'm just wondering what the disposition of that will be, because I feel that's a pretty good asset. Whether we use it for picnic and canoe race stuff or something else, but I'm just wondering, are we going to be getting rid of it, or are we going to be moving it like up by the tent or something, or just because it's a good asset to have?
Sure. It is a good asset. That being said, it's really tough. It's one of those things that kind of snuck in for the town. And once we start having some construction out there, it's most likely going to become an issue. It's already started to become a little bit of an issue with Snow Creek. Basically, you can't have something temporary there. I don't know if you're aware of some of the happening with wave rate. So it's something we've been aware of that eventually will have to get sorted. Scott's advice for the last 3 years, 5, 10 years, starting to move things that were just things that we accumulated in there that Brett Peterson's canoe that started to move out. So at this point, it is relatively emptier. We'll have to figure out where to put those things. It's a little bit of a compromise where like so there's something going in, so a couple things would come out of there. That being said, tent was a temporary structure, just was it illegal and it's still there 12 years later. So these actually kind of dovetail into a larger discussion at some point. The sea trade is probably getting close to kind of end of life. Is that they're developed by residential as far as not have to legitimately do kind of a different set of rules for the fire district as others.
Yeah.
Those are the things that are going to come to mind a little bit. Fortunately, we have been working on finding space for those types of things. So it's in better shape than it used to be, but it's a valid and warrant point in the sense that we have a lot of stuff. We have to keep it best.
Well, the point that I was making is if it was possible to hold on to it, because that would be great, then that would, I think it would serve us well in the future at some point, but if we can't.
There's nothing in the AT&T contract as we're still waiting on that says it has to go. That being said, long term, I can see us eventually having to hold on sea container off our property. Yeah.
So one of the things you ought to be aware of running into it, codes have changed. So if it's in place now with the town, your grandfather. If you move it, you have to have a permanent foundation set up on block. It has to be rebarred and everything else, and earthquake proof and the whole deal. So there is probably some other consideration that the minute you do move it, it triggers the new deal. So
that being said, it could physically remain there with the footprint of the tower.
Okay.
So,
Well, it'd be nice maybe if we tried to make that happen before being forced otherwise. But I'm just pointing out because in the future, I mean, I know those things are valuable as far as storage is concerned. We've got a lot of stuff. So if possible.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think those are things that at some point we'll have to have the strategic discussions of
Yeah, right.
where we want to keep things and how we want to work that out. There's a whole myriad of solutions that we can approach, but hold on to what we have now.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
We could move it over to your house.
No, that's not gonna happen. Not gonna build a foundation.
All right, thank you for that, Commissioner Beeler. Any other comments on last month's board meeting minutes? You have a motion to approve them?
I would make a motion to approve minutes
Second.
as read.
Okay. No other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chief Tamara, do you want to wait a little bit for Carol or?
Yeah, I believe we just
Something else?
had somebody ring the front bell, which I'm assuming is her, so Captain Kale just went down to grab her if you want to give her a minute.
Just hold off a minute, but
Sure.
And maybe actually under special presentation, should we announce the addition to the board packet and then skip to Carol, or do you want to wait until that item?
I think the special presentation might take a few minutes.
Okay.
So we've got Wade with CSDA on the line, so let's do Carol.
So if you had any trouble getting in and out of your place or
And Dane, can you hear us?
No,
okay?
just my jacuzzi is a big issue right now because I've got it on one side,
sure can.
and the wall of snow is, it's so high. I've got it. I'm up on the wall.
so I guess we'll just stand by for a second, finish our lunches for waiting for Carol.
Yeah, we can move to item, I think it's 8A, if you want to look at the resolution.
Should vote on that one.
Unfortunately, we don't have page numbers, because it's right after the budget.
Oh, okay.
There you come.
There they are. Welcome, Brad. As soon as we finish here, if you want, there's food in there from Salsas. Okay, we're going to move on to new business. We'll start out with item 8A. This is going to be a tough resolution to pass, but we'll consider resolution 2023-01, a resolution of the Mammoth Lakes Fire Protection District recognizing the contributions of Commissioner Carol Schills.
So if we could have a little comment on that.
Do we have that, the resolution there?
We do, and so we kind of moved forward and assumed that the board was going to pass this 4-0.
Yeah, I said,
Buck and I went ahead and we got our signatures on this just because we didn't want to hold Carol up. We also had back here just a token of our appreciation. We got something else coming that we had some.
do you want me to
issues
read
with-
that, those 5 items there?
Yeah, I believe, if anybody wants to comment, if you want to start with the whereases and then give the board a chance to comment, I'd like to comment as well real quick and
Okay,
see if it passes.
okay. Do we have any comments on item 8A?
I'd just like to comment that I remember the night that I came over to your house to ask you to consider joining the board. And I'm so glad I did because you've been totally an amazing asset to us. And I'm so sad to see you have to leave, even though you're not leaving, but you have to leave and I understand it. And it's just the way it is. But thank you for your time. And you put in a tremendous amount of time in the years you've been doing this. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart because it means a lot to me personally. So thanks.
I would also add that you've really been tireless in how you've helped everything we've done. The multiple different sort of resolutions that we've run up against the town, the measures that we put together, and all the time and effort you put into that. You're always prepared for the meetings, and you're going to miss that. So, thank you.
And Carol, I'd like to say it's a pleasure having served with you on the board and really appreciated all the time and effort that you put in on the propositions that we tried to pass to better the fire department. I figured out you did about 99% of that. I did 1%. So all the paperwork and everything, it was greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank you too, Carol. It's going to be tough to go on without you. You've done so much with the propositions and the hiring of the new chief. So it's been great to have you. You're going to be missed terribly. So we'll see if we can carry on without you, but it's going to be tough. Thanks again.
Yeah, if I could just add in, Chair Wall and I sat down this morning, we were just kind of going over the fact, 2016 time flies, it's amazing. Commissioner Curry said it best, there's 99% of things that are happening that people don't even acknowledge and notice. So thank you. Frank was the lucky one he had for most of his tenure, but I appreciate you staying on for the beginning of mine. It really is much appreciated.
Would you like me to read some parts of that resolution before we pass it, or
If you don't mind.
no? Like we had it here. Okay, this is a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the Mammoth Lakes Fire Protection District recognizing the contributions of Carol Schills. Whereas Commissioner Carol Schills began serving on the Mammoth Lakes Fire Protection District Board of Fire Commissioners in 2016, and whereas Commissioner Schills worked tirelessly being a steward of the district finances and engaging the community on multiple policy matters. And whereas Commissioner Schills played a key role in the recruitment and hiring of the current fire chief, Alice Tamar, after the retirement of Fire Chief Frank Freeball. And whereas Commissioner Schills has always been mindful of the interests of the district and has consistently worked to support district personnel and operations. And whereas Commissioner Schills has provided outstanding leadership to the Board of Fire Commissioners. So therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Commissioners of the Mammoth Lakes Fire Protection District as follows. The Mammoth Lakes Fire Protection District Board of Commissioners honors and recognizes through this resolution the extensive contributions of Commissioner Schills and enacts Resolution 2023-01 immediately upon adoption. So thanks again. That's
Are we ready for a vote? Commissioner Beeler, what is your vote?
approve it.
Commissioner Curry, how do you vote?
Approved.
Commissioner Mendel, how do you vote?
Approved.
And Chair Wall, how do you vote?
Reluctantly approve.
All right, then this resolution passes with a vote of 4-0, no one absent, no abstentions. Congratulations, Carol. Thank you.
I say, I really enjoyed my time the last 6 years with you guys. I can't think of a better board to be on. I've been on all women's boards, I've been on mixed boards, and this being and all, you know. It really went smoothly. A nice group of guys and place to hang out. Thank you, guys. I'm not going anywhere, and after we get things settled, need any help with the measures and stuff like that.
Careful what you say.
We'll make a note of that. We're gonna make a note of that.
Could we get a picture of Carol with the board and with your presentation?
Or
Your plaque?
Yeah. Who needs us? Brad, it's food in there.
Yeah, in front of the sign.
And maybe we should have you guys with the screen off so you don't get all that reflection.
Squeeze in there.
Yep.
Hold now, bro. All right, on 3. 1, 2, 3, smile. 1, 2, perfect.
Rose among thorns.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol.
Brad, do you want lunch?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
Pretty good, Brad. You don't know what you missed now. I knew we could talk you into it.
Leave some brownies for us.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, continue on without Carol. Special presentations.
So today for special presentation, we have Dane, and excuse me, I'm like, what's your last name? Waddle or what?
Wadley.
Fine, okay, and we're gonna adjust our volume as well. He's a field coordinator with CSDA. CSDA is the organization. We've been members kind of on and off for a long time. It's kind of like Western Fire Chiefs, FDAC. They helped us with the insurance that we had to work out when we had the problems with our previous provider. We did have a last minute addition that's not in the packet. Pass over to the board that he has provided as well. And he just wanted to take a few minutes to go over kind of some general CSDA things that they provide for districts. Floor is all yours, Dane. The other edge.
What happened?
Hi, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, board staff. Again, Dane Wadley. I'm the field coordinator for California Special Districts Association, essentially the liaison to special districts out there in Mono County. Usually don't make a in-person trip out to your area in the spring or the summer, but wanted to come on just a little bit before that, especially as you guys kind of, as you said, rejoined CSDA as a member back in November, and just at least introduce myself virtually, if nothing else, and give you just a little bit of information about CSDA, what we've been working on, and what we are working on, looking kind of going forward here as we really ramp up 2023. So just real high level, CSDA is first and foremost a advocacy association, right, for special districts in Sacramento and the state capital, and increasingly back in Washington, D.C. through some federal advocacy efforts that we've initiated really over the past 3 years since COVID basically ramped up, and our work trying to get some financial assistance for special districts related to the COVID pandemic. So, but primarily focused right now for most purposes in Sacramento and the state capital. And some of the documents I know the chief has included in the packet earlier was some of our legislative highlights from last year, some of the bills that we got involved with and issues that we were following, and had quite a bit of success in getting bills that we think are good to the finish line, or stopping bills that wouldn't benefit districts from reaching the new law status. So that's the advocacy side. Real quick, I'll come back to that, but just wanted to also touch on briefly too that you may already be aware, but CSDA is a not only a training / education / resource for special districts in terms of numerous classes, Brown Act, ethics training, various webinars to help board and staff in special district administration and governance operations for that matter too. And then also through our in-person conferences. So we have a number of conferences for general managers / fire chiefs. We have board member conferences as well, board clerk conferences. There's a whole host of opportunities to get involved in. And then there's training, or there's scholarships for special districts such as yourself, obviously, to attend any of those training events. So whether it be a conference or one of the less expensive webinars, there's money available to help you get that training. So I can obviously send you all that information if you're so inclined at the appropriate time. But then on the resource side too, so again, not sure if you've had a chance at all to dig in deep to the CSDA website, but there's a host of templates and policies and procedures and sample documents, et cetera, to help you guys with things that you may be looking for or need. There's also our CSDA communities page, which is basically a big kind of email chat room conversation going on where districts are looking for, hey, I'm looking for a job description, or we had this issue come up at a board meeting, help. and there's opportunities to engage with other local districts and a lot of our business affiliates who provide services to special districts to interact in that forum and get some questions answered in a expeditious manner. So those are the primary things certainly on the education side, as I mentioned. In terms of the advocacy work, so I'm sure you're probably aware, but the legislative session in Sacramento is just starting up for 2023. The new legislators were elected, obviously in November and seated in December. And so now they're kind of starting their process of ultimately introducing bills. And, we'll kind of go through this whole legislative process, which happens every year. The biggest thing right now was the governor released his initial January budget proposal for the state for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. So July 1 of this year through June 30th of next year. And the biggest news out of that, of course, was that there's projecting the state to facing a pretty significant budget deficit this year in contrast to previous years. And so we're certainly watching that, with obviously looking at the proposal right now. There's a whole process, basically a 6-month process that the governor and legislature go through in terms of the state budget to finalize the budget, as you're familiar with on your own budget. But that's something that certainly CSDA will be very involved with right now, will be involved over the next 6 months. Fortunately, right now, we don't see too many negative aspects of it, even though there is this deficit. Special districts aren't generally related too much financially in terms of, certainly different than the counties and whatnot in terms of the funding directly from the state. So there's a little bit of protection, if you will, in that aspect, but there still could, inevitably be some sort of impacts to districts that we, of course, will be watching very closely. We're also watching too on more of the regulatory side. There's the California Air Resources Board is looking at a zero emissions vehicle mandate on local agencies to take effect, essentially be starting next year and then through 2027. There's certainly a lot of concerns amongst our membership across the state for various reasons, certainly costs, the ability for the actual vehicles to be available that the state's mandating in terms of the marketplace, right, to actually buy them. And then I think just kind of more, logistical challenges too, and particularly as you guys are familiar in your area with, snow and the reliability, I guess, of the vehicles in snow conditions, et cetera. So that's something, again, that we're very involved with, getting a lot of feedback from our members, partnering with other local agency associations from the cities and the counties to, work with the state on that whole issue and make it reasonable, frankly, for special districts. Last thing I'll touch on briefly is, again, relevant since we're doing some of this via teleconference, but the governor late last year, I can't remember the exact date, but basically, actually it's October. It was in October of last year, said that the emergency order related to COVID is going to expire in February 28th of this year, so a little over a month. And that will basically end the ability for districts, for the time being at least, to utilize Assembly Bill 361 to hold teleconference meetings like this. Now, there is another bill that was passed last year, AB 2449, which provides some means for districts to do teleconference meetings, virtual meetings under various conditions. So that will still be in place. One of CSDA's legislative priorities for this year as well is to sponsor a bill that would make the provisions of 361 essentially more permanent as the bill expires at the end of this year. And so we've heard from a lot of districts that there's a lot of value. They found a lot of value in having that flexibility through the pandemic, and would like to carry it going forward. So we're going to try to work on a bill to accomplish that. So keeping very busy, but the most one of the other things too is just trying to get in front of, I talked about the new legislators coming in, a lot of new legislators, certainly for you guys. In your area of a new state senator, you have a new, I believe a new congressional representative as well. And trying to build those relationships is with those representatives is certainly a priority of mine here in the early part of the year, and may reach out to the chief or other staff to kind of help do so as we move forward. But with that, I'll go ahead and stop. Happy to answer any questions and look forward, like I said, to being out there a little bit later this year to hopefully meet with you in person and touch bases. So thank you so much for the time.
All right,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any general public comment? Nobody thinks.
I would, no public comment.
See you.
I'll comment later.
Okay.
Do we have any questions or comments for Dane or?
Well, I'll say it now, and I know that this is in markup period, right? I mean, this is a proposal, but the ZEV mandate for especially heavy duty presents a real problem, because the way they have phrased this is it's to advance the market for clean vehicles, which means that no one's offering the 33,000 pound vehicles now, right? But in the next 3 to 5 years, we're counting on the fact that someone's going to offer enough that we're going to get 100% of any new product converted to ZEV. And I think it's, having been on the manufacturing side of that for many, many years, that's a real roll of the dice. That those are going to be available and they're going to be affordable. So it's just a concern.
Yeah, no, certainly appreciate that. And it's, your comments are, it's what we've heard basically from a lot of our districts. Our utility districts, as you can imagine too, are really, they're quite worried about this as well too, with all the work that they do with lines. And
Yeah, and it's not Explorers or Expeditions or that kind of stuff, but it's your medium, heavy duty vehicles.
Right.
And that's a real problem.
Yeah, even when you start getting into your expeditions, we're looking at replacing a couple of vehicles. The reality is that the use case for what we do, we'll be out on a wildland incident for 48 hours straight. We need to be working the whole time. So I'm not saying we're not going to get there. There might be some opportunities for pooling cars for different types of works. I think, but this is going to be a challenge for the type of work that we do.
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, thanks, John. Good comment. Any other comments?
I'm good.
Okay, then we'll move on. Nothing on the consent agenda. And moving on to number 6, the budget.
So I apologize, I didn't have time to get the numbers on the pages, but the budget starts right after the meeting notes. If you're following along. And I could go through any line items that you might have questions about. As far as big picture goes, we're essentially on glide path, recognizing the fact that we expected inflation this year. We've had multiple of our, whether it's SCE or waste or buying food advance, all of our vendors have let us know that we're going to see 10+% increases on costs. There's always been a little room in the budget, and we were extra careful this year to make sure that we're recognizing that. So everything's in relatively good shape for what we expected at this point of the year. We did have quite a few front-end expenses this year for personnel costs, both that overlap between myself and Chief Freeball, and then bringing in Chief Brooks to work with Chief Such, just to make sure that we do that transition properly, which I think was worthwhile. Certainly made the transition of bringing in a new duty chief much smoother and had a transfer of that knowledge, which ends up being costly if you don't do that. So Bob Brooks finished December 31st, but that 3-month period was
For the third time.
for the third time. He claimed he was gonna move further, but he's down to Bishop, so I think he's ready to zoom up here if we have an emergency. But like I said, we did appreciate his time, and everything is relatively on glide path from the expense side. I can answer any questions or get into more detail if you prefer, or Chief Walker and such. But we're working more on having them kind of have control over some of their budget line items, so that you should be able to answer any questions if you have any.
Chief Ricks is like Frank Sinatra. Retirements.
Yeah, we've had a couple people try to do that here. He's top of the list. If there's no questions on the budget as this today, we did receive under item B our first tax apportionment at 2.6 million. That is, I budgeted fairly cautiously on our revenue side this year, so that came in pretty significantly above that. I would just caution the board, if you look at, I don't know, a good kind of indicator in this local community is kind of Matthew Lehman's housing report, obviously, because we're 95% property based. Last year did go up as a whole, but if you look at it, the year actually went down. So from January through December, there was a decline. I think we're probably at a kind of similar point as 2008. The question just is, do we plateau from here? Do we see a downturn? Just for some reference, 2008, the downturn was approximately 10%. I think we can weather that storm. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen this time, but that would be about, we're most likely going to hit 4 million with our budget this year. So that would be about a $400,000 loss. And that's where I think, being judicious with our money this year, we still have to take a look at some of last year's money. We ended up net positive, putting that away towards, we had the economic reserves, which started with 72,000. We contribute a little bit more of that from last year's budget, putting things towards items that, don't end up hurting us in the long run, will set us up for kind of whatever gets brought into us. So
I think unlike 2008, just a quick comment is that we don't have the repossession rate. It's more or less that the market is slowed down. And a lot of people bought at the top. So chances are they're not going to sell at the bottom, or as it's trying to catch the falling dollar bill.
I completely agree with you. I think my concern is, I'd say that's spot on the revenue side. We get held by Prop 13 to stay at 13%. So we actually still probably have some catch up between where the market actually is and what our tax revenues are showing. Honestly, my biggest concern is kind of a stacked inflationary environment where our, costs of doing business just keep going up. The costs on our employees just to make it keeps going up. So kind of being able to weather that storm, but yeah, it comes. Any questions on the budget?
Alex, did we get any kind of discount for electricity, water, propane? Is there a commercial rate, or are we paying residential rates for?
I'll let Chief Walker answer that one.
The short answer is no.
No?
Yeah,
We get a commercial rate.
so we do get a commercial rate with propane. We have a contract with them. It's $1.10, I think, over their cost, which is significantly better than the residential rate. But generally speaking, electricity and propane have gone up.
That's through America, right?
Yes.
Chief Walker also researched the fuel costs that I believe the board had asked about.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So fuel purchased from town is cost plus 10 cents, which covers their operation of that, that item. So they're not making it.
Yeah.
And after talking to them, all of our services that we get from the town, they're not allowed to profit from us. So it's basically their
Okay.
costs.
That's great to hear, because I never knew that one way or the other. I think, so.
On
Thanks.
the diesel side, did we come close to running out? I heard that the town was,
No, so the 4 gas stations in town ran out. The lowest, the town where we get our fuel from, they got down to about 3,000 gallons. And at that point, they had organized to send loaders down the hill and escort up, and they were right back up. So
okay,
according to the town, 3,000 gallons allows the town to run for 2 days in storm conditions, which is
That's it.
We got, yeah, so we got down to a 2-day crunch during the middle of this stuff, but then they brought another 6 in, so we basically, we're looking pretty
And we don't have any storage here for diesel?
good. We have, all we have is, we have a 100-gallon auxiliary tank in the back of 3391, one of our pickups.
Mhm.
And what we typically do is prior to one of these big storms, we top off all of our vehicles, top off that tank and just roll that way. But town has been pretty reliable in their ability to get us fuel. Obviously, they need it as well. They've got backup generators to run their pumps. So, but no, we don't have an in-ground tank here.
Just for historical reference, way back in the 80s, we did have our own fuel here, which was just up basically at the corner, would be the southeast corner of the building here. There was an underground tank. Don't remember how big it was, but
Right.
just for reference,
When we took it out, was there remediation?
that was a long time ago. It
That was
all done.
before.
Oh.
Yeah.
Before anybody.
I could be extremely wrong here, but that is probably a giant nightmare and headache. I don't know that we want to
Okay.
entertain as having our own
I
underground tanks.
retract.
Yeah,
my-
yeah.
That's why most people are.
Yeah, that was all done. It probably was done by about 86-ish.
I think there was a time when it made huge sense tax-wise to, you could avoid a lot of things, but I believe those are all gone.
Environmental plus the environmental.
Scott, do you think it would be feasible for us to have like our own tanker? Where we had a couple thousand gallons that we could keep like up in the shed, where we don't have to put a tank in, but we would have that available just in case.
I could certainly look into it. Basically, once you get above 100 gallons, you start falling under special regulations and special permitting for these vehicles. You just can't, you're not allowed to just own a 1,000-gallon fuel truck.
Or run afoul of fire.
But I could look into it. So like the reason we have the 100-gallon tank in the pickup is because that's under the radar. They don't care.
Okay,
So anything bigger than that, but I could certainly look into what that.
yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have to be a new vehicle or anything like that, even if it was 500 gallons. Because we're not having to go out in the field and service equipment. But
I will say, that being said, I don't remember a time when I believe that we were under some duress because we didn't have fuel.
Okay.
So that hasn't been a problem as of yet.
We were on the phone with the town yard as soon as this kind of rumor came in from the school district. There was nothing outside of their standard operating procedure. They were very comfortable with this. That's what they have to do, is get loaded to make sure that they provide escort for it. We have a similar issue in this town with propane with the franchise line. At any point in time, that line is down to maybe 2 days, then you would lose a large portion of town. So there are fairly robust systems in place. I'm not saying that we couldn't get a storm cycle. The district is obviously extra protective of keeping everything topped off. Our standard policy is everything sits at 3/4 and you top it off right away. So certainly, a couple more of those 100-gallon tanks like utilities would be heard if that's something an option.
So I'll look into some options.
Okay, any other comments on the budget? And other items? Moving on to new business, we've covered number A. Number B, consideration of submitting a letter of intent to become an assignee of Cal OES Type 6 engine.
So I provided just a couple kind of informational pamphlets as well as some documentation on what Cal OES fire engines are, just to give a little history. So the state has its own fleet of Cal OES rigs. Mammoth Fire actually had one And Brett, you know better than I did. This was before my time that I've run it.
We've actually gone through 2 for sure, if not 3. Right?
And, yeah, so the nice thing about a Callaway-S rig is what it provides you with is that is the first engine that's called out on an assignment, essentially from a mutual aid perspective. Wildland firefighting is just like any other emergency situation where it's very difficult to keep firefighters trained up even on structure fires because they're not occurring as often. Wildland fires are actually occurring more and more often, and that's not the problem. We just struggle to get people out, and there's been a kind of a chicken or the egg problem where, you know, we ask for people to come in and go on an incident, but they also have a job and they can't leave for 2 weeks and then come back. By taking this engine on as a district would essentially put us to the front of the line for assignments across the state. So this is tied in to the concept of trying to have a seasonal fire engine. My initial recommendation would be that we put that out at Fire Station 2. Commissioner Curry has asked for equipment out there. This would not be 24/7 coverage. We would also potentially have this thing out across the state for a large portion of the time. But working with the fire chiefs up in Tahoe, you have to start small. You start with a crew of 4 to 6 people, and you start to build out to where you can build a defensible space program that works on wildland mitigations in the district, gets out and fights fires across the state, and brings back that experience to keep the district safer. This is one piece of that, but I believe it's a crucial piece for making that program work. I believe we have the funding and some shifting of some employees to put together a summer seasonal program and see where it takes us. Like I believe I mentioned to the board, probably the prime example of this is Incline. They now have a crew of 71 individuals where it's only 10% now that is funded by the district. The rest of it is fuels mitigation work, getting out on assignments. So there's a lot of things that would line up really well if we can take this on. We have to be careful so we don't start, take on too much, but there is kind of a point that you need to hit in order to make any traction. And part of that is the ability to get out, which is what we would provide. I've been working with Callaway quite a bit. They would really like to see us in this position, so they had some other interests, and they've been holding off till they heard back from our board.
What would be the downside?
The downside, so one of the downsides to having a Callaway rig is the fact that if you send out one of your own apparatus, you also receive money for that apparatus. So you send out a type 6 per week, the district gets $20,000, and that's what districts like Antelope Valley is. They're basically trying to pay for their apparatus. So you're not gaining anything in the district from that sense, but you are getting that experience. You can start growing the program that way. It would obviously require a place to be kept. Again, you have to look at the reshuffling some staff or some apparatus. Again, the recommendation would be that that's out at Station 2. I initially wanted a type 3, which is kind of like the 33, 34. That also gives you some staffing opportunities as far as who gets 3 or 4, and that lets us get other people on there. The type 6, I believe we're limited on what we can send out as far as people goes, but to a certain extent, beggars can't be choosers, so we have to prove ourselves to the state, do a good job with the type 6s. We've taken some looks at the type 6s. It is a relatively well-designed rig from what we've seen. There can be problems with it. Speaking with actually White Mountain, had one down south of us. If you're familiar with White Mountain Fire, repairs can be an issue because you have to go through a process to get it repaired. And ideally, anything over $100, they have to approve, go through. So these were Fords.
Wiper blades, basically.
Basically, yeah, you can't get a mechanic to look at anything for that price. So there's going to be kind of bureaucratic state hurdles to jump through, but nothing that is anymore all of our other bureaucratic
I was
state
gonna say,
hurdles.
if that's
So,
the downside, I don't see.
Yeah, the other part of it is a commitment by the district to get this thing out. If you essentially, and I believe Brett can speak to this as well, if you can't get it staffed up, what ends up happening is it gets taken back by the state and they're less likely to provide it to you as a resource in the future. They really see Mammoth Lakes as kind of that, should be that main piece in the Eastern Sierra where there is a limited amount of resource that they want to see us kind of take the lead on this. So I believe it's a great opportunity for the district. The Cal Waste is very excited about this and would let us start putting together this summer season program. That being said, if that is our intent, we're gonna have to move quickly. I've tried to time with the association. Ideally, fire season really starts kind of wrapping up in June. So we would have to have some crews on at the beginning of May to do some training to get them at the level that we want them before they head out in June, and they could be hitting the ground running all summer theoretically. So when you start lining these things up backwards from get the crews on, do the training, fly the position, do all the negotiating with the association before, we're right there trying to squeeze us in.
Is the association supportive?
I believe the association is supportive as a whole. We're trying to work on.
Yeah, we just have to work on detail of how exactly it works to staff, not only with the seasonal crew, but with full-time and part-timers that we want to go out.
Yeah, and Commissioner Mendel, Michael, I'm on the Zoom link. Yeah, I've started some preliminary negotiations with Alish, not like anything on agreement, but just kind of what we need to work out first and trying to get an order of what's most important, because as Alish said, this is coming very fast. And so, we also have MOU negotiations coming up. So we'd like to focus on those issues that would affect the seasonal crew first, and get some sort of like letter. Has Free Vault used to say some sort of letter of intent or some sort of like temporary agreement until the MOU is officially signed off. But yes, the association is supportive of the OES rig. And
Is there a
backing that.
timeline on when that could happen, Michael? As far as getting a letter of intent, I mean, having the association move forward and committing?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're looking to start meeting maybe like next week or the week after. So Alish and I are looking to meet pretty soon here to start these discussions.
What are the hurdles that you see from the association side?
I wouldn't say really hurdles, but there are kind of administrative things that we need to figure out. Things kind of around CalPERS, because one of the issues we do run into now, just even with our seasonal crew, is that 1,000-hour max, right? Because if you go over that, then you're paying CalPERS. Do we have there being some sort of where the employee contributes more? There's also, do we run a full, is the seasonal crew like a full 2-person crew, and then we try to backfill one spot with full-timers and part-timers, which I think is kind of what the association would like to see, so that we get some experience by those people. So how are we staffing and filling this rig? So those are some of the issues that we need to work out.
Just to dovetail in on that answer, there's a couple things that we started. In order for this to work, we're going to have to change up our staffing model a little bit. We've been set on 1,000 hours, quite a bit as a threshold. There are ways to get over that 1,000 hours, which you send somebody out on an assignment for 7 days out of 24 hours, break that very quickly. So this doesn't work without doing that. Working with our legal, with LCW, essentially kind of the higher end. There are ways to mitigate some of those costs. I think, the employees take on a larger portion of that purse, so it essentially balances out to those that are receiving Social Security, because that gets taken off of your purse. It's one of those balances that they would have to make to be part of this program, essentially. So that takes away that liability for the district to a certain extent. There's always unfunded accrued liability and that sort of thing. But balancing this out so that it makes sense for the employees, it's not a huge burden on the district in order to attempt to do this. The other part of that is healthcare. There are ways to work that out as well. But there are, like Michael mentioned, some pretty significant little pieces we have to put together for this to work out properly. With, again, the biggest intent is that we have, We want to help the state, absolutely. We want to make this a safer community. A big part of that is giving everybody that experience. So making this work in a way that we have that collaborative approach to where that seasonal crew is getting experience. We're providing some opportunities for full-time as well as part-time staff. That's where like a type 3 rig is ideal because you can staff it as you have staffing available. So we have to meet the obligations of the state. We also have to provide enough of an opportunity for our employees and make sure we're doing that fairly across all the classifications. So it's doable, but it is a lot of work. And that's where, really sitting down, putting in some longer sessions to really work some of these out through some side letters as we work through the whole MOU is going to be really crucial. And like I said, the clock's ticking. So
I have two things. Number one is, how do you, what kind of a timeline are we on? You said you had to let the state know pretty soon, and I get that. And secondly, I feel that it would be very beneficial if it could be worked out, if that's to us, to this department, district, in the sense that, we would be contributing to some of the other disasters in the state. But likewise, when we have a disaster, we're probably going to be looked very favorably. Not that we wouldn't be, but I'm just saying it's the, give and take routine that would benefit everybody, the state as well as us.
the emergency system is built on mutual aid.
Yeah,
We we need to be a part of that.
Yeah, we need to be.
I was just down, so it's kind of a side note, but I think it's a important one that shows the value of things like this. Dakota Schneider's father had his memorial this week in Las Vegas. We sent about 8 members. That is huge because those are, I've been on quite a few Cal OES meetings where this doesn't become a money decision. This becomes a fire chief convincing a city manager, I'm gonna go take a risk to defend this community. I talked to a couple Las Vegas firefighters, actually, Rob Witherall. It's a small world when you get to that point. When I look at our risks today, I look at the fact that we have significant snow load on our structures. We've got a window coming, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. But imagine an earthquake today. We could have significant damage that we will not be able to handle ourselves. So we have to be part of that Callaway system. The closest, task force, heavy task force 1 is out of Las Vegas. We're probably the first resource. And, the chief John Steinbeck, he and I talked for a while. We could get them here, and that's how these things have to work. So there's absolutely that factor of helping out the state and bringing that in. It doesn't cost us anything other than we're committing a resource, but it's a resource that we can grow. So the way that I've explained this to some of our part-time and full-time staff is this is not taking anything from anyone. It's growing the pot. It's providing more opportunities. I can see this being a fantastic long-term job. We have quite a few people that come in. They're, for example, ski patrollers in the winter. They come in, do our academy, and they go work for the Forest Service and become a Forest Service firefighter. They do that for years. It's a great way to make a living for a while, So there's some opportunities where we could actually hold them and not have to move on to that next phase that would clearly benefit this organization, this community.
So I have a question. So one of the worst things that could happen is we tell the state, make a decision today, yes, we support this. Tell the state we're on, and then the association can't come to agreement with, and we have to tell the state no. Are you and the association committed to making this happen?
I can only speak for myself. That being, that's what you're asking about. I will answer you. So, Michael, if I could speak quickly, and then I'll let you answer.
Yeah.
I absolutely share that concern. So when I spoke with Callaway, they actually wanted an answer in December, just so they wouldn't give it. And I said, I can't do that because, again, this is a long-term commitment. I'd rather lose this one and pick it up in a year or two if that happens than not get there. So I have stressed to multiple members that are interested in this. And I had some concerns a few weeks ago. A lot of it's just been, we've been slammed with everything. I think that speaks for myself, for Michael, for everybody. So we haven't had all the conversations. Michael and I had a pretty significant talk after training last week, and they have told me, and I take their word at it, they are committed on moving this forward. It's also to the benefit of their employees. I mean, this truly is, for me, kind of growing that pie. So I think the only thing that needs to be stressed is there is quite a bit of work that needs to happen in the next 2 months to move this forward. I wouldn't bring this to the board if I could make a bad call, but if I did not believe that we could jump over those other hurdles to make it happen.
And I'd just reiterate what Alice said, right? I think when we've discussed this amongst the association board, we all see the benefit. We see the benefit to our members. This is something we'd like to see happen. There's minutia in the details that need to be worked out. I don't see anything over just some of the larger discussions that I've had with Alice there where we would probably hit a deadlock. And so, I hopefully we get a break in the weather and we can not be shoveling our roofs and our driveways, and we can meet and we can get this all worked out.
That being said, if the board decided to move forward on this letter of intent, what that would do is I would provide that letter of intent to the state. They would get us an agreement, and my plan forward is that we would just take that to the next board meeting. So that would give us a month to show that we're actually making progress with the association, a couple of these other moving pieces. And then we would actually have the board approve the agreement at the next meeting. Chief Walker has looked over kind of the boilerplates agreements that exist. There's some requirements on training, on keeping up with the equipment, everything. We feel relatively comfortable to comment further if you have any questions on it.
No, it's pretty standard stuff, but yeah, they've definitely got their, this is the way you do it. But it looks doable.
The state picks up the maintenance costs, correct? In a roundabout way. Got
Under $100, yeah.
Okay. Right, just being clear.
I mean, the biggest problem, it's not a problem, it's just another hassle to deal with, is that you have to get everything in writing. So before you do anything to the rig, you have to get permission in writing from the state before you do anything. It just is gonna slow the process down, typical bureaucracy, but that's just how they run it.
That being said, I can't remember the exact numbers on their fleet, but they've got, over 300 vehicles that they've got out. So there is a process for this. It's not like we're doing something that's.
Are you
outside of the
required to
norm.
send it out for repairs, or can it go to the town without approval?
No, you just have to get approval before you
Do any work?
do any work. And that's everything. short
32
of
$100
windshield
bills.
wipers.
Well, I think it sounds like a good idea. We should move forward.
Yeah.
If it gets too complicated,
Well,
change our mind. Yeah.
if the association is committed to getting the yes, and you're committed to getting the yes, then I think that's a pretty easy.
So you need approval from us to move forward with this?
I'm looking for staff direction for submitting a letter to Cal OES.
So you need a motion for that?
I believe it doesn't require an actual motion, it's just staff direction.
Okay.
And I believe I received that. from the
So
board.
direction.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
directed, yeah,
I think
move
you
forward. Michael, move forward.
Well, thanks, Chief Tamar, for the work you've done that so far.
Thank you.
Okay, item C, consideration of termination of cost sharing agreement with Mono County. Town of Mammoth Lakes for the costs incurred working collectively in the EOC for the COVID-19 pandemic.
So moved.
So this is essentially a closeout contract for COVID-19. So as you are aware, Chief Revolt worked closely with the EOC, and there was essentially a cost sharing between three parties: the town, the county, and Mammoth Lakes. Other than the fact that Mammoth Lakes did not pay a portion of those costs, we provided essentially services in kind with Chief Revolt. What this does is it closes out that contract. It's been looked over by our legal Brent. I'm not sure if he's on the line today.
Yes.
But okay. He has reviewed it. I've reviewed it. It's already been signed by the county and the town, so it's essentially just closing out of that.
And I am here, Alice. I'm here.
Brent, did you have any concerns? I know we've kind of gone over this.
No, initially I did, and we got those taken care of. It kind of left some stuff open-ended where there was some possible liability to the district that I didn't like, but that's been resolved, and I think it's fine now.
Yeah, their language was a little poor on the front end, but they. So this one would require a motion.
Move that we accept the agreement to terminate the cost share agreement.
I'd second that.
Okay, any other consideration before we take a vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes. So we'll terminate the cost sharing agreement. And moving on to number D. Considering entering an agreement with LCW for general legal counsel services.
So as the board is aware, we had Brent as our general counsel for a shorter period while he was working for another firm. When he moved to LCW, that contract ended with that previous firm. We were looking into seeing if there was a way for him to continue general counsel services. And he was able to work that out from the LCW side. At that point, honestly, our biggest hiccup was getting the IT systems working, just because he does work remotely and we had some periods where we just couldn't hear each other. And obviously these board meetings are a large portion of what that job entails. We believe we worked out the IT systems, and we wanted to reintroduce this contract for the board to consider. Brent's been a very good legal to work with. He's been always available whenever I've needed consult, and it would just be such a continuation of our services, but a recognition of the fact that he's providing general counsel service. Brent, did you have anything you wanted to add to that, or?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. Yeah, no, we'd be happy to do that. It's you guys are a great board to work with, so certainly a pleasure for me to help you guys out.
So do we have a contract for this, or?
So there's a contract in the packet. Essentially, I'll take you through I've spelled out the pros. I do have to probably provide kind of, the concerns in the past is we'd like to have somebody legal. I think we've done a pretty thorough search, local legal. At this point, it's just such a specialized field that there's not, anyone that can provide this. You also end up with some conflicts of interest. There are some talented attorneys such as Andy that works for the town, but there's a conflict on almost everything that we do. So this contract is very similar to the one that we already have standing with LCW, and that's the one that we've been working under for the last few months. What this does is it recognizes that we essentially have general counsel services through LCW as opposed to just services. Brad, is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, in other words, LCW already does kind of the human resources, labor side of things, and I can't remember if you guys are a member of the consortium, but possibly that.
We are, yes.
Which is good for you guys. And then this just basically is a separate deal that where we're acting as general counsel. Yeah, it just allows us to provide general counsel services to the board. A little bit of a newer area, I think, for LCW, but not for me. So, but my transition to them kind of allows us to work out. So.
Brett, would you still make occasional visits here, or are we gonna do all?
If the board would like that, I just don't know how cost effective it is. In other words, because there are, travel time and that kind of thing, and it being, what are we, about 5-6 hours away, I think, located in Fresno. We can certainly do that if we need to. I just think for a cost effective purposes, that's why it was important to get the technical aspect of being able to appear remotely down, and I think we've done that. It seems like all the audio visuals working, and it's just more of a cost effective way for the board for us to represent the board and be there. If it's ever necessary, obviously we'll figure that one out, but at this point I think the intention is that we do pretty much remote appearances just to save the board money.
Yeah, I agree. I think I remember the last contract, you were gonna visit once or twice a year or something, but
Yeah.
that doesn't really seem necessary.
Yeah, like I say, if for some reason it becomes that, then we'll figure that one out, but there's really no reason we can't do remote. I'm not a board member, so we don't have some of the restrictions that are on, video conferencing with board members. And so, and then, Alice and I are able to communicate routinely through Zoom or phone or whatever. So, I think all that technology kind of allows us to represent you, where maybe years ago it would have been a pretty difficult task. So, so
Way it works now seems like you're just right next door.
that's it.
Yeah.
The miracle of technology.
Yeah.
That sounds good. So do you need a vote on that, or motion,
I
or
would need a motion to enter into this.
Okay.
agreement, correct?
do you guys have any more discussion or questions you want to ask?
And Buck, how should I be calling for a vote on each of these?
Ideally, anytime.
Okay. So maybe we do you call for the motion in the second, and then I'll call for a vote by person and then announce the vote.
Okay,
I know this is all new for us.
So I'll move to accept the contract for legal services.
I would second that motion.
okay, we have a first and a second on that. Is any other comments?
Okay, under the vote, Commissioner Bueller, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Curry, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Mendel, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Chair Wall, how do you vote?
Yes,
Okay, the motion passes with a vote of 4-0.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Much more official.
Thank you, Brent.
all right, thank you, Brent. Okay, we'll move on to E, consideration of authorizing repair costs for engine 3333 with Curtin's Fire.
So as the board was made aware, responding on a wildland incident last summer, we had some damage done to 33 tree. We were able to put it back in service with some kind of minor repairs that we did around the station. Our intent was to hold off on any kind of cosmetic and large repairs as far as fixing the roll-up doors so they don't have straps and that sort of thing. So we got out of the wildland season and felt a little better about things. 3333, just in full disclosure, is a rig that technically has come to the end of its life. It was supposed to get replaced, but we felt that it's a good piece of apparatus and we've been holding on to it. We've had some discussions about really doing kind of a strategic assessment of our whole fleet. One major consideration is, for example, when you look at our workforce, we have a part-time workforce. If I was a LA County firefighter, I could be at station 98, 37, 19, I'd have the exact same rig. And I would be working 24, that would be my full-time job. We're asking part-time staff to learn 13 different pieces of apparatus. So now is a good time for us to look at that hopefully strategically, and holding on to an older piece of equipment that's actually serving really well. What that does is essentially buys us time to where we can be putting money into our reserves, holding on to that, knowing it's doing the job, and really taking the time to say, what does the fleet look like, right? Because you can't just flip your whole fleet over. That's not feasible. So it makes sense to have that little bit of a holding period on equipment. 33 is one of Scott's favorite rigs, mostly because it doesn't take depth. But so the recommendation here is just to keep our equipment in the shape that it should be in. I mean, the reality is we can drive it out the door today, but we do keep our equipment, maintained appropriately. This is outside of my purchasing authority. Scott, you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's basically the costs are what they are, and being what they are, we need to ask permission before we spend the money. So I would very much like to get 33 repaired. It's been a really good rig for us, still is a good rig. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles on the motors, which is becoming one of my
How old
favorite
is it?
things. It's a 2000. But otherwise, from the damage from the tree, otherwise the vehicle's in very good condition. So
Yeah, I mean, it's only $3,700 worth of parts and $20,000 of labor, so.
It's a lot of,
Yeah.
yeah, unfortunately, it's pretty specialized stuff. So.
I have three things I'd like to review. What would be the timing on it to get that done?
Would like to get it over to, I believe they're gonna need it for about a month, so we gotta take it over on the west side, so it's around over the hill. Would like to do it probably February, March, assuming the
Oh,
weather
so right away
cooperates.
then. Okay, yeah, okay,
But before we get into any kind of wildland season, so.
okay. And just an item for curiosity, remind me of the very first item here on page 1 of the invoice or the order. What is the right front body stainless steel upright? Is that 4-inch discharge?
No, it's basically where the box begins, right behind the pump panel, is that stainless steel rolled section. That's what took the first hit.
Okay,
And so they got to basically make all these parts from scratch because the manufacturer no longer exists.
Got
So
it.
it's a
Yeah.
very custom.
yeah, I just couldn't
Yeah.
believe. And secondly, on replacing the door, are we talking about the right-hand door? Is that the captain's door?
Two roll-up
Or the
doors.
roll-up doors.
Two roll-up doors. The center one seemed to be okay, but the two larger
Okay.
ones took a pretty good beating. So they just get replaced in their entirety. All new slides, everything,
Uh-huh.
all those pieces.
Okay, good, perfect.
What roughly would be the cost to replace the entire rig?
$800,000 to $900,000.
So
Pretty much does it, yeah.
So there's no insurance that covers this?
So that's a good question. We did have that discussion. Previously, we had the privilege of having Bob here at the time. Most of these have just been handled by the district, which is one of the reasons when we were in this insurance crisis, they actually were able to offer us insurance. So there's a balance there. I don't know if there's a right answer necessarily, but it's no different from when you have an individual thing if you decide to handle it by yourself or go through the insurance side of it. So in the past, with these relatively minor compared to some of the larger, catastrophic things that can insure.
Just had a total loss, you betcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
The district has decided to handle those in-house. That's how this one was approached.
And for the board's benefit, I would just like to personally say, I mean, I've had a lot of experience with that engine and I respect it a lot and it does a lot for us, especially being 4-wheel drive that it is. It's a great piece of apparatus. So got to get it fixed.
No question in my mind.
Yeah.
20,000, 800,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. We need to fix it. Keep it working right and looking good.
This would be a piece of equipment that once repaired, did I hear right? It's 23 years old.
Correct.
Okay, and so it would be up for replacement in a couple of years?
Yeah,
2 years. Like,
It was actually already up for replacement. Should have been
Should have
replaced
been
back
20 years.
based off of our previous
Yeah,
schedule.
so you
But I mean, if I
increased
run
it.
800,000 divided by 20, our cost is 40,000 on average per year. So there is a point of diminishing return on this game, obviously, where you don't want to be replacing old rigs. Just because of where we are strategically, where we want to take a look at the fleet as a whole. This is one of those, just, you have good luck and bad luck with the rigs. I would say that 20 years is kind of what we put on there, but there's examples of rigs. Tahoe they bought a 4-wheel drive ladder truck for probably similar to ours, about $1 million, that they found out was a huge albatross and ended up getting rid of it very early in it. So there's rigs, if 20 is your timeline, you'll have some will go over, some will go under. This one's still.
I'll make this simple for you. We have $800,000 to replace it.
If you ask me to, I would say.
So if we repaired this and replaced it in 2 years, we would keep it in reserve? Or would it be something that we had to get rid of in order to get a grant to get a new rig?
At some point, we just start running out of space and mechanics, so we
Yeah.
do have to eventually
Yeah.
get rid of it. I can see this being in our fleet for 2 years, honestly, even 5. And at that cost, I think that makes sense because it is still a very good piece of apparatus. Scott and I have had some discussions on, quality versus quantity. This was a well-built rig that still has some mileage on, especially here where it's not a first out rig, so it can go on calls quite a bit. So from like a value perspective, absolutely. As far as keeping reserves, there is a point that it's just not worth it. That being said, we can obviously sell it like we've done in the past. There is a huge value for this district in providing these to other local districts around us, giving them first right to buy them, just because of that relationship and the need for them to show up on something that works. When you have districts around us that have a total budget of $100,000, getting them a working piece of apparatus means that they can show up on a mutual aid call for us. That ends up being our benefit. Now they are our storage and our mechanics, and they are that sixth rig that we can call. So I can see this staying somewhere closer for a longer period of time than 2 years.
Probably doesn't even have more than 10,000, 12,000 miles on
I'd have to look. It's probably closer to 16, but
it. 16?
yes, it's not.
So Scott, looking at the figures here and that, and like Brett said, that first item, is that absolutely necessary to replace that stainless pole?
It's hard to say if it's absolutely necessary, because if you want, I'll go down, we can look at the rig after the meeting here, but it's all, everything kind of got pushed in. And so I guess it's possible they can pull this stuff out, but stainless steel typically doesn't like to rebend after it's been crunched.
Right.
So, and I certainly want to get it there. And the problem is the estimate was all done with pictures and communicating with them. When it gets there, they'll obviously, that's when it really matters. And yeah, if there's ways to not do some of this stuff, we'll absolutely take that for sure.
Okay.
So somebody would drive this to Modesto and
Yep.
somebody would follow them, maybe drive them back and then
Yep.
you'd make another trip to pick it up.
Oh yeah, this is totally normal. We've done this with
Yeah.
every one of our vehicles has
Yeah.
not been on this trip a
All
couple
the time.
times.
You're
So
you're probably not going to the past though.
No.
not today, not today. But this is unfortunately just our normal for where we live, is getting to, the two, basically the people that work on our vehicles are on the west side, unfortunately.
Everything's like that here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, normally, I would not be in favor of spending that much money, but deferring to you, you're saying it's worth doing that and replacing all of this stuff in order to keep it.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd go along with your evaluation of it.
I think a good piece of valuable equipment, we should keep using it as long as we can. Yeah.
So with that, Roger, I would move to accept your approval.
Yeah, and I'd second the motion.
Okay, I guess we have a motion, a first and a second. Any other comments on it? Then,
Carol, you want to call for a vote?
Commissioner Bueller, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Curry, how do you vote?
I,
Commissioner Mandel, how do you vote?
Yes.
And Chair Wall, how do you vote?
yes,
The vote 4-0, or sorry. 4 in favor,
Zero.
none opposed. Thanks.
okay. Moving on to a radio system update.
So I'll let Chief Sudge speak on this one. This is one of the things that he's taking on with Bob Brooks's departure is our radio system. And honestly, a lot of the kind of current developments that have unfolded are political, so I might throw my 2 cents in on it, but he'll give you the quick operational.
Ordered 4 test radios from Cal OES to actually go and confirm that this system's going to work for us. it's right now. A lot of rapid developments, but Mono County vote was pretty contentious. Some folks in some of our other departments that are frustrated with this process. Basically, they're concerned that it's not going to be as interoperable as they want it to be. Just kind of the whole point of the system is that it works up and down the state. So
Jeff, could you speak just a little louder, please?
Yeah, sorry. They're concerned that it's not going to be fully interoperable with everyone else. And to their point, it may not work very well for the feds, which are a huge partner for us. Having said that, we don't have a choice. We're in the middle of nowhere, and our county has not put a whole lot of effort into bringing our current system into the modern age. Some of our repeaters are over 20 years old, and these are millions of dollars to go and get these things back up to where they need to be. This is a great way for us to continue to leverage state dollars and federal dollars to bring us up to a modern Trump system. So it's a positive thing overall. And it's going to save us a big chunk of change that Mono County has picked up. Our repeater, Lincoln Mountain, it's Conway, spacing on the other two. There's two more sites, sorry, Benton and it's the last one. Anyway, the county's picked up the tab for those with additional federal relief dollars. So it's a win for everyone.
Just to dovetail to that, kind of provide that bigger picture again. Traditionally, the radio system has been provided by the county. They've been, I'm not gonna say failing miserably, but they've had some issues over the last probably decade. At which points the town of Mammoth Lakes and the district started looking at other options. Parallel to that, the county did a study with federal engineering that came back and basically put a price tag on kind of a similar 6 repeater system. It wasn't even trunked, it was a lower level system. They had a higher one for a trunk system at about $18 million. The county was not in a position for $18 million. So we're talking about bonds and everything kind of started dragging at that point. This actually was something that Chief Brooks had pretty significant impact as finding Elk Mountain Communications, looking into the CRIS system. And the state system's not perfect. If we had $18 million, I guarantee you I could build us something that would probably be slightly happier with. That being said, it is significantly superior to anything that we can afford or the county can afford. We were moving forward on our own without them because the county started to drag its feet, was not making a decision. At that point, we were responsible for paying for at least the 2 repeaters that would tie in with the state system. So we had some funding allocated to that. The county was able to get $3 million into the omnibus bill. So they offered to, again, pick up the repeaters, which has been past history and is part of our agreement with the county for reciprocal services. We go on their car accidents on 395, they provide us with a communication system. So in my mind, everything is moving back to where it should be. That does save us on the repeater costs, which we're gonna have to fold over anyways for our mobile and handhelds. There is some frustration with some of the fire districts because there are some things that are going to be more difficult. Anytime you look at one of these municipal systems, trunk systems, wildland becomes a little tougher. There are ways of doing it with one radio, but it's not ideal. And most of the time, what happens is you end up with your simple radio you use 95% of the time in district. When you go out on wildland, it's to your wildland radio, which is no different than what you see at LA County, Orange County, or any of the kind of larger systems. So yes, there's some validity that nothing is perfect. If I had $20 million to spend on a comm system, I would probably build one that might be a better fit. But this is by far the darn best solution that we've come across in the last 10 years. So the board, there was some discussion at the board meeting today at the county. They did approve the motion, so the county will move forward on funding these 5 repeaters. Again, just for reference, about one repeater site, when you try to build it on your own, it's about $1 million. So you start looking at 11 repeaters with the state funding half of those, working off existing infrastructure. This is just money well spent.
Was that just today that the county approved?
Yeah, it was. I was actually a little late for our meeting because their meeting was occurring at the same
okay.
time. Chris McCrassick, who used to run the paramedic program, is the emergency manager now. He's taking the lead on that from the county side. everything's moving forward. And like Jeff mentioned, we should have 4 donor radios here to where we can start working with the system with the 6 repeaters that are available.
If, going back to the OES situation, would that radio equipment on their rigs be
That's a
comparable or?
Good question. They're both Cal OES.
Yeah.
So it will work on, and this is where it gets complicated because there's also an 800 megahertz system. I don't know what it's going to require for this region. Most,
Okay, to
most
be
districts end up putting in their own radio
Yeah.
for this. So most likely, I think it's going to be a combination of both. I think even when you look at CAL FIRE separate from Cal OES, there's a good chance that CAL FIRE will one day end up on the CRIS system, but these things take, 5 years to work themselves out. Speaking with Jeff Edelston, who's been our consultant for Mountain out of Colorado, what his past history has seen is that as these state systems get built out, they basically start to merge just from a cost perspective, and everybody takes them on, and that becomes kind of the system across the state. So over time, that's probably the most likely scenario.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Chief. Number 10, storm cycle update.
Just wanted to keep you in the loop. I know a couple of you reached out and I spoke to personally, obviously do that anytime. We always expect to just get destroyed over the holidays for that 2-week period at Christmas. And this year just kept going. We've had pretty rough 4 weeks from an operations perspective. Chief Walker just trying to keep the facilities and equipment up and running, and dugout has been a tremendous undertaking. Staff has worked just relentlessly, coming in on days off to run the loaders, keep this place dug out just so we can keep operations going. So just want to give a quick thank you, kudos, and kind of recognition. Hoping we get a little period of a little bit of sunshine here, and we can catch up. The flip side is now every tourist and my parents are on their way up to Mammoth because they heard it snowed. So I don't think there's going to be any rest for the weary, in my opinion. We're entering a pretty critical period where basically the snow water equivalent, how much snow we have on the roofs, is at the highest point it's ever been. It's bigger than 2017. It's bigger than 1982. And we don't know where that's going to go. We've had quite a few discussions with the town, the county, and Cal OES just make sure we're ready. Obviously, the biggest threats for us are going to be structure collapses in some cases, but just structure determinations on where we can let people into some buildings. And then propane. Propane's a big one. The crews were out half the night last night on Sierra Center Mall because it had a propane leak into the building because all the pipes run on a flat roof that's just getting crushed and broken. So I see our life being pretty rough for a couple months here. And it's just kind of the nature of the ebb and flow of our snow cycle here in Mammoth Lakes. But again, kudos to staff for keeping up the level of service and operations that we've been able to do.
Is there a possibility of putting out a public service announcement
So
to have people reminded to get their propane tanks, at least the valves cleared and the regulators on the residences cleared?
yeah, so I did actually have Natalie do several press releases, including propane tanks, digging out exhausts, keeping your roof. The town's doing the same thing. I heard driving up, AmeriGas is putting some on the radio.
Good.
At this point, it's difficult. A lot of those end up being second homeowners. Some of them, they're
sure.
just behind and they're dealing with the immediate problem and not solving, the
No
problem that
Yeah.
those of us that have been here for a while, like I was shoveling my roof, after every storm. And that's why I'm not too far behind, knowing that you might start to fall behind a little bit. So we're trying. The messaging is certainly getting out there. It's
Okay,
tough. Yeah.
thanks.
Good job. We appreciate the hard work. Okay, progress on the replacement of board member Carol Schultz.
So just a reminder, we ideally have a replacement for Carol's position at the February 21st meeting. That will fall within the time parameters that we have, and also maybe so we don't have to have a special meeting. So that gives us roughly a little over a month to get that finalized. We've got a couple people that have shown some interest. Maybe working with Brett. I know he had a couple people that he had reached out to, and I've got a couple that were kind of on the list waiting to see what we got back from our initial people. Caroline also put a couple things in the paper, and then we had some necessary posts that we had to do in sections 1, 2, and the town offices. So those have all been taken care of. So we've kind of met all the administrative hurdles that we have to meet. Now we just have to find a board member that's going to be a good fit. So again, we do have a couple that we're working through, but if you think of somebody in the next couple of weeks, like that person would be a really good fit, please pass it on either to Brett or myself. We'll be working through the handful of candidates that we have. So,
Which paper did we put a notice in? In the
Put the
sheet,
public notice in the sheet and the Times
both
this
papers?
week. Yep.
Yeah.
It might have been in the Saturday.
Yeah, I saw it in the
Yeah,
staff.
I didn't see it. That's why I was curious.
I always do both because it's not, their advertising staff isn't always reliable. So even if we only need one, we go for 2.
Well, should be hard to replace, but we'll find someone. And let's see. Figure me out.
Yeah, I'm gonna be out of town the week of January 30th. My son has some competitions in Utah, so I'm gonna head up there with him and hopefully enjoy skiing in a ski town as opposed to just shoveling. So
Good for you.
the district will be in good hands here. Obviously, I'm reachable myself on a video.
Okay, any other board member comments?
I've got a couple of things. First of all, just like to thank the department for their operations up there with the snowcat, getting those guys out of the grinder. I understand, Scott, you were really instrumental in getting the porta power in there and getting that thing reversed to get them out of that. You guys did a really great job. Congratulations to you.
Yeah.
Job well done.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, I'd like to thank you for my jacket. That is surprisingly warm. And really do appreciate it. That was really swell of the department to do that for us. Thank you.
I have one thing I was thinking about, the architect here that was talking about the sprinklers. Did we ever kind of get back with him and tell him what was decided?
Mike Britton,
Yeah, Mike
I've
Britton,
spoken with him a little bit.
Okay.
He kind of did a workaround on the one. Yeah, and that's where things just come, it's difficult due to our staff capacity. I would love to take a little bit of time and take a look at, we have some ordinances that were written probably 20 years ago at this point. They all had good intent, but some of them now have unintended consequences to where, and you can, obviously, this is a strategic priority for the board that will bump it up on where it stands with other things. But putting together a committee that includes some of our prevention staff, people from the public such as Mike Britton clearly have the interests of the community and not just their business interests in mind, and some town staff and really taking a look through all of our ordinances, making sure that they are a good fit today for providing for public safety, but still moving projects forward. There's certain things like somebody wanted to add a bathroom and having to now sprinkler that bathroom that in my mind are not, the best use of kind of the influence that we have over the community to move things forward, where there might be better ways to address some of those. For me, the biggest hazards that we have to mitigate are wildland propane. So working to move things forward, especially some of these old properties, I think that's key. I do speak to Mike on some sort of, not gonna say a regular basis, but I did reach out to him after that. And this is a project we'd like to keep moving forward. And I can work with Chief Morrow to see if there's, keep that plugging along.
Yeah, he was pretty polite and had valid points, so make sure we answered. Let him know where we stand on it. Hey, any legal counsel advice?
No, nothing that I could offer as additional on this meeting, so.
Association comments? Okay, any other announcements? And I guess that brings us up to administrative business, Carolyn.
For item A, the next meeting is scheduled tentatively for noon on Tuesday, February 21st. Does that work for you?
That works for me.
Okay, I will send out a meeting request.
Okay. And Chief, you want to talk about the,
Yeah, so we have a recommendation for adjusting our minutes a little bit. And it's kind of a multi reasons why. One is it's just the way that this gets done by local government for the most part. I've attached kind of a guidelines for meeting minutes for local government at the end of your packet there. It goes into what types of minutes should be held and why. You want to just take a look for a reference, you can look at the town minutes and the county minutes. And there's multiple reasons for this. Really, the minutes should capture what got done, not what got said. It's really tough for Caroline to capture again kind of our intent sometimes. And really the best way to do that is through recording it, and you can have that available for the public. So the recommendation is that we move to action minutes, which essentially are a shorter version of what Caroline's doing today. She puts in several days every month trying to create. If you look at the last minutes, they're 8 pages long, and she still comes to me and goes, "What was your intent, this or that?" And that's really, we're now at a point where with the Zoom working and having the ability to record these meetings, we can have those meetings available on video on our websites, just like you see with the town and county. And then what the meeting minutes do is they provide what happened essentially. So this will make Caroline's job easier here. It'll also provide a better record in that the recommendation is that, she's not trying to determine what did Roger really mean when he said that, or what did Alex really mean when he said that. And she's just putting kind of the facts down, and makes her job easier. And we still provide the public, because I do find value in these types of discussions. I've gone to other board agendas and I've listened to their minutes, and it's really nice having that recorded and being able to look back, okay, Stacy Corliss said this, or John Wentworth said this. So this is just moving more towards kind of the standard practice, and also make Caroline's job a little easier ideally. But it's a recommendation moving forward if you're comfortable with it.
Yeah, I read through this stuff and it makes sense to me.
I would think Brent might have some comments on that.
Yeah, the board can certainly, there are a couple of different ways to do minutes, and action minutes are certainly an acceptable form and fairly straightforward. And like Alice pointed out, you still have the recordings of the meetings if you want to know verbatim what was said, that kind of thing. But it's not an uncommon way to do it, and especially when you're, strained with staffing, concerns. It's probably a logical way to do it, but yeah, it's certainly not uncommon at all.
Caroline, you do an amazing job keeping the minutes.
Yeah, really.
I don't know how you do it.
This is going to be pretty liberating. I did have one more thing to add. When the CSDA rep that spoke earlier talked about that clerk of the board conference, I did attend that my first year, and I did actually get one of the scholarships to pay for it. And CSDA's recommendation at that time was also action minutes for districts.
What's the name of the method that we use now?
It's a
Taking the minutes.
it's what I think it's in bullet point number 2, no, it's 3. So it's what kind of minutes. So what I was doing is keeping detailed minutes of the discussion, the he said, she said.
Oh,
And
okay.
that's what they don't recommend because as the chief said, a lot of times I'm trying to interpret
Right.
intent. Like, did Chair Wall, was he in favor of that? Or did he say that rhetorically? And a lot of times you'll see in my previous minutes, I'll say
Right.
Commissioner so-and-so rhetorically stated that. And so that's not what you want to do because there's liability there because you're not capturing the actual facts. There's interpretation.
Okay.
So by eliminating the interpretation and allowing people to listen to the video, they can interpret on their own.
I think that makes perfect sense, just to record the actions and there's a video there if we need it. Makes it simpler for you.
Board is comfortable with that change, we'll start using that
Yeah,
methodology.
I'm comfortable with it.
That sounds good.
So let's see. Next on the minute. Yeah, rotation of the board officers generally, well, historically, we've always done that right around January 1. Also historically, we've been skipping our December meetings. So we'll be rotating the board officers based on the terms of office tracking that I have. So effective tomorrow, Roger Curry will be our new chair. John Mendel will be vice chair and Brett Beeler will be secretary. And then we'll move through the rotation annually in January. I didn't know if there was any legal recommendations there.
No, and I actually would like at some point to be able to see any bylaws or anything like that we have that speak to that. I haven't been able to see those, but understanding is this is established and practice for the board to do that with an automatic rotation. So that's certainly fine.
Hand off the gavel to Roger tomorrow. Or right after this meeting.
You know, I'm reminded of Lyndon Johnson when he said, nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. No, that's fine. Look forward to it.
And then
Okay.
the last item is the LAIF access and bank transfers. My practice has been in the last 3 years to use primarily Brett Beeler and Carol Schills to perform those functions. I think initially the district applies for a PIN with LAIF. The district gets assigned one PIN for the entire district. But the past practice has been that only the board members have access to that PIN. So I think that Brett still knows the PIN, but Buck and Roger do not have it. Is that correct?
No, I don't.
Corrected, I don't know.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna have Brett give you two the PIN. And then I will reach out to each of you individually. We'll go over a quick training. It's really easy. You just log into the website. I need the monthly statements so I can rotate through each of you for providing me those. And then we also need everyone to kind of be able to do these bank transfers. So I'm not always going to Brett whenever I need one. So for now, Brett's going to provide the two of you with the current PIN. And then I'm going to work on contacting LAIF to get a new PIN because Carol we need to remove Carol's access to LAIF. I don't think that any of us are worried about the urgency there. So I'm working on that now, but in the meantime, let's use what we have. We'll remove Carol and then we will eventually add the new board member.
And just for my comments on this, this is vital that this stays just with this board, the current board. Don't necessarily need for all 5 of you to do it. I know Carol was kind of taking care of this, but ideally we have at least 2 of you that can do it, just kind of with the standard of having 2 people that can practice that. But this is a big part of your responsibility, is kind of that financial oversight and management, and having that separation of duties that really belongs to the board right now.
Okay.
I know it's a little bit of a pain.
And with that said, I
It's
do
pretty
need
easy.
the December statement. So if I could walk you through, maybe if you have a few minutes, how to do that.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Got a few minutes?
Sure, absolutely.
He's riding with me, so.
Okay. And if not, we can wait, but I know that probably hampered your budget discussion a little bit, but I didn't get billed the December late.
Credit still. So. And if, yeah, as much as we can streamline, we appreciate all the work you do. So if we can tie those in when you're already signing checks, please let us know. Not trying to create more and more hurdles. We do appreciate your time. So.
Agree. And I do try to do that. I
Yeah,
try to
yeah,
always have the link ready for you when you sign.
yeah.
Okay, if any other comments, concerns? Will we close the meeting? If that's it then, meeting adjourned at 1:52.